Hello. Welcome to the Smile Revolution. And I am Princess Wow. I don't have to spell it anymore. W-O-W. It's my Baltimore accent. Some people are like, what? Wow. Like I can't understand what I'm saying, but you can see it right there. We raise awareness to the healing power of a genuine smile. Sincere smiles only. Abby's here. Hey. Hi, Ab. Thanks for joining. I like it when people come live. Most people watch and replay, but it's really appreciated when people do come on live. There's Laura. Hi. Hello. Thanks for joining. So, let's see. I started this Smile project, Smile Revolution in 2005. If you've never seen my show, last time I saw my dead conscious, he gave me a big grin, and that's how this whole project started. I've done a lot of things. Well, anyway, I am an entertainer, hat designer, singer, songwriter, former radio show host. Now, I started doing interviews 2006 in Kingston, New York, and I started back doing interviews about, I don't know, a year or so ago. This is my 159th show since March 2020. But I was doing a lot of variety shows and got back into doing interviews. So I love doing interviews. And a lot of people say, you don't need a guest. They just want to see me. Well, I like doing both. It's fun for me. And I know so many interesting people and I like to interview. It's just something I enjoy doing. So, tonight, and I'm also, a lot of people say, they're married, their wives, their husbands, they have kids, their grandchildren, whatever. I'm solo with my cat Tiggy. And I have dolls from my own likeness. This is my firstborn, Miss Wow. And they like to come on my show. I can't, they tell me that they like to join the party here. And I have one more in the back. Okay. So this is only for people who don't know me and maybe who knows somebody. You never know who's watching in replay or live. Okay, so I have a really exciting show tonight. John Kruth, musician extraordinaire and musical journalist. His book that just came out yesterday, March 1st, Lunacy, the Curious Phenomena of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon 50 Years On. It's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. Here's the cover. Well, you'll see it again in a little bit. But anyway, it's an amazing book. And I can't say enough good things about it. But we're going to be talking to John shortly. And I wanted to share a few things first. Well, this is my first smile button. May you give and receive many smiles. And actually, Robert Reedy, who's a poet, who was my former co-host on the Smile Revolution radio show in Kingston, New York, WKNY, had a quote that I found recently I wanted to share with you. The arts for the health of a culture must be edified. The collective mental health of all the golden ages, of all the great civilizations of the past were energized by their artists, musicians, writers, actors, and seers. He was always like, on the show, he always had all these amazing poems and just all these quotes. And so I just found this one. I wanted to share it with everybody. And The World According to Mr. Rogers, Important Things to Remember. There's an old Italian proverb. I can't say it though, so I'm not going to say it. It means the person who goes quietly goes with health and goes far. Hurrying up and using a lot of shortcuts doesn't get us very far at all. And then he said, to me, what makes someone successful is managing a healthy combination of wishing and doing. Wishing doesn't make anything happen, but it certainly can be the start of some important happenings. I hope you'll feel good enough about yourself, your yesterdays and your today, that you'll continue to wish and dream all you can, and that you'll do all you can to help the best of your wishes come true. I'm proud of you for all the wishing and doing that has helped you get to this point in your lives, and I hope you are too. And then one more thing, and I'm going to go right to John. I'll give you his bio in a minute too. Okay, this book is 365 Ways to Give Thanks, one for every day of the year, Brenda Shoshana. When someone who has been visiting you leaves, walk them to their car. If that person is not driving, walk him or her to the door. It's a special feeling to be accompanied during times of arrival and departure. When we walk someone right to their car or to their door, not only does that person feel cared for, but the individual feels as though we want to be with them up to the very last moment and are grateful for the visit. This makes times of transition easier. The person who is leaving feels especially appreciated and does not feel alone. I love this book. And let's see now. Well, someone else wants to say hi really quick. Okay. My little frog here, he's going to give you a big smile. And okay, so John Kruth, a two-time ASCAP Deems Taylor Award winner. John Kruth is the author of such books as To Lives, wait a minute, I can't even talk now, wait, To Lives to Fly, The Ballad of the Late Great Townes Van Zandt, Rhapsody in Black, The Life and Music of Roy Orbison, and Hold On World, The Lasting Impact of John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Plastic Ono Band, 50 years on. As a music journalist, Kruth's articles have appeared in the New York Times, Rolling Stone, American Songwriter, and many others. He's a singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, and as a sideman, he has performed and collaborated with such musicians as Laurie Anderson, Violet Femmes, Patti Smith, and Ornette Coleman. And I'm a big fan of his music. You got to check him out. He's incredible, and he's very funny. You'll see. I mean, he's hilarious. He's a really, it's so fun to read his book because you learn so much, but also he's so funny the way he writes. So anyway, I'm gonna put on the interview. This is actually pre-recorded, and I think John's on. I'm not sure. I think he is. He said he was going to be on, so I think he's on. And but I had to pre-record this interview. Okay, so I'm going to leave you all, and I'll be back. But I'll be on. So if anybody has any comments, I'm here, and I believe John's on too.
Princess, what's happening?
It's so good to see you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, this book, your book, Lunacy. I love this book. It's like,
what happened to you when you read it?
Oh my God. Well, I hadn't heard Pink Floyd in decades. And there's so many songs that I hadn't heard, and you like introduced me to like bands I never heard of, and just the whole history. I never knew any. It's like, it was just like mind blowing for me, the whole book. And you're such a great writer that it's just like, and you're so funny, and you're so funny. And so you make
gotta keep it entertaining. You know, what's
do.
Information without entertainment? I taught college for like 12 years, and sometimes I felt like a variety show host when I was teaching, you know.
Well, you are funny. And I think I just read that on Bandcamp, on your bio, you have some humor books.
Oh, they were poetry and short story books. Like, I'm sure that there's a lot of humor in them.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of tragedy in them too.
Well,
I think there's a bit of tragedy in that.
Okay, right. You could have been you could have been a comedian too.
Oh, I could have been a lot of things.
Well, you are a lot of things.
But I was a disappointment to many, many, many teachers and people like that.
Okay. Well, anyway, the point is that you do make it really, your writing is amazing. And so it's like riveting. I thought it was going to take me a while to read the book, as I told you. And I'm sitting here like, I can't put it down. I mean, it's just so interesting. So, and I'm totally into the whole British invasion, and you and I are the same decade, watching the Beatles, right?
Right. Life-changing.
Life-changing, changing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, did you write this book in the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was like I had just finished the book on John and Yoko that came out in 2021. That was called Hold On World, perfectly named for the pandemic.
Wow.
And that book was all about their Plastic Ono Band albums, their matching Plastic Ono Band albums that came out in 2021. And my editor at Backbeat Books was like, well, what's next? And we bounced a few ideas around, and he told me he really liked these 50th anniversary books I'd been writing, because I wrote one also on Rubber Soul called "This Bird Has Flown,"
I really want to read that too.
and
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, what's next? Dark Side of the Moon or something?" And he just was like, "Yes." He really wanted to go for that, and I wasn't so sure. I was a big fan of Syd Barrett, of course. I loved Syd Barrett. The weirdest kid on the block when I was growing up had Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and I found that to be an excellent book to read The Hobbit to, and The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I really loved that book at the time too, and so I got into Pink Floyd here and there. I had an older brother who was listening to that band, and Uma Guma, and the book starts off with a story about my really cool cousin Debbie, who had this really funky, wild room, and she was a classical guitarist. And every Thanksgiving every Thanksgiving that we spent over there, I learned about the Incredible String Band or Tim Buckley or Pentangle, Andre Segovia. She always had great music, and it was there were definitely some advantages of being the youngest kid around because older brother, older sister listening to music, cousin Debbie, hipster boyfriend of my sister, he turned me on to all kinds of great music, and the mandolin, which is like my main instrument, and
Hmm.
blues harmonica and all of that. So growing up in the Jersey suburbs, not too far from the city, I could just pop in when I was old enough to go to the Fillmore, and was lucky enough to catch Floyd at Radio City Music Hall for the big
Oh
uh,
wow.
debut.
Oh
Yeah, it's in
wow.
the book. I recall the story in the book, and because it started at like 1:30 in the morning, it got so late before they came on,
Wow.
and by the time you got out the door, I think it was in March. It was right after the release of the record. By the time you got out the door, it had been like lately snowing, and it was the dawn. Sun was coming up. It was dawn. It was really, for like
Mm,
let's see, 1973. So I was 17 years old.
right.
Going on 18. It
Hmm.
was, it was it was a great experience.
That is so cool. Well, there's so much in the book. It's hard to remember every. I'm gonna have to read it again. It's like there's just so much information. It's like,
Well, good.
really,
Thank
it's
you.
like every page.
Well,
Yeah.
I write books so that yeah, hopefully you will want to go back. And there is a lot of information, and there are a lot of detours before you get to that moon. There are a lot of people in the Pink Floyd world who are like, oh, like I love Syd Barrett, but I hate Roger Waters, or I don't listen to the later Floyd, or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
That's fine, whatever it is. It's the history of not only Pink Floyd and the British invasion, and I go into the fashion in there, and I talk about the Fool and Marique, who did, who painted Apple, the Apple Boutique, and George Harrison's car, and
Right.
the whole scene. And I talked to Pete Brown, who wrote the lyrics to White Room, who knew Sid and watched his demise,
Mm,
and also Ivan Paul from Doctor Strangely Strange, one of my favorite weird bands that nobody seems to know or remember,
mhm.
who Joe Boyd also produced, because Joe Boyd produced the very first Arnold Lane, the very first single
Right.
by
Right.
Pink Floyd. And so I didn't go to the obvious sources. The obvious sources, members of the band, A, hard to get to, B, have already said their piece about
Right.
this music over and over and
Right.
over again. There's nothing new that's going to come out. What you want to do, young writers out there, is think about what is going to illuminate your subject in a different way that hasn't been done before. We all know the story. We've heard it a dozen, times told. Next Hanukkah, I mean, it's just repeated and repeated. So really, I wrote a book that I hope that uh, members of Pink Floyd will enjoy, or that the members of their family will enjoy, things that they might think of that they might not have thought about. Maybe Dadaism, their connection to Dadaism, or Luigi Russolo and the Italian supremacists, and all of that. So you want to go to Cafe Voltaire, hooking up Cafe Voltaire to the UFO Club, or UFO Club, as most people would call it.
The
And
UFO. That was Joe Boyd. Joe Boyd
yeah,
started that, and that was
yeah, Joe Boyd's a
1966.
trip,
Yeah, I've been
right?
studying into. I've been looking him up because it's in the
Well,
back.
his book is
I
fantastic.
just
White
ordered it. I
Bicycles,
just ordered it.
fantastic.
I can't
I
wait to
mean,
read it.
growing up, I knew that I probably couldn't get George Martin to produce one of my albums. There were two guys I always wanted to produce my albums. One was Joe Boyd, and the other was Joel Dorn. Joel Dorn from Atlantic Records, who eventually wrote the liner notes and put out one of my records, so he didn't produce it. And Joe Boyd, I got to meet with through the wonderful Eric von Schmidt, who was one of his old friends up in Cambridge and
Oh,
recorded some
great.
great records himself and did some really beautiful paintings himself. But I think Joe Boyd was more interested in the young ladies going by than he was in talking to me. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
he'd already produced Richard Thompson and Nick Drake. Who am I?
Right, right. Okay. Anyway, I can't wait. I'm excited about getting his book too. Anyway, and then, but
It's
what's
great.
fascinating, what I love about your book too, is that you go into the concept album from 1940 to 1973.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, there are people that might think that Sergeant Pepper was the first concept album or something. I mean, of course, when we were 13 years old and that term was being bandied about, we all thought this is something new. This is something that the Beatles
Right,
invented.
right,
Or if you were, younger, maybe you thought that Ziggy Stardust was the first concept
right,
album, or
right.
maybe you thought that, Dark Side of the Moon
Or
was, where it was actually
Tommy.
one of the last of its kind. It's funny. It's like that with Robert Johnson. They call Robert Johnson the king of the Delta blues singers. Robert Johnson was like the caboose on that train. There were so many before him that
Hmm.
were really great classic players, not to take anything away from him. And also with Pink Floyd, you would think, oh, concept records, they're like done by British artists,
Right,
rockers, art rockers. It's like, hell no. Woody Guthrie and Hank Williams were the first guys to make those records, and all the way back to 1940 with Woody, and then you had around 1953, I think it was Luke the Drifter, Hank Williams, and then you
right.
have, I mean, maybe the guy who made the most concept albums of all was Frank Sinatra.
It's amazing. See, that's the
So
thing about
think
your
about
book.
it and check into it and listen. And then country music, it's just like, oh my Lord. I mean, the most far out of the far out was the Rubber Room. The Rubber Room by Porter Wagner, my Lord. I
Oh,
mean, it just doesn't get any, darker or deeper.
I got you. So you know how it affected me.
That's, if you haven't heard Rubber Room by
Rubber Room.
Mr. Dolly Parton, Porter Wagner, you don't, you could think that, oh, Pete Townsend was getting really into a dark, weird space with
Uh-huh.
Tommy. It's like, yeah, that's nice. I like it. I saw it live. It was great. Da 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 da. Porter Wagner, folks, country music really, really addressed the concept album.
And then also, I just have to mention the Smile album with Brian Wilson and the Beach
Of
Boys in
course,
1967. And you
of
and I met
course.
through Stevie Kalinich, who wrote with Brian and Dennis Wilson. So I just wanted to
Right.
thank
Well, we
Stevie.
didn't know about that record right away. I
No,
mean,
I
it was
know.
weird because
Right.
you got Smiley Smile and you went, huh, this is a bit half baked, isn't it? There's some really great stuff on here, and then there's some stuff that sort of sounds like they got tired of making the album or something. And then of course you started to find out about the Grand Smile, and thank God that Brian went back to it and really finished it up,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's some really deep, beautiful music. I mean, don't get me started on Brian Wilson.
Okay. Well, anyway, I had to mention because I have the Smile of Revolution project, so of
Of
course I had to,
course.
So anyway, and then you want to talk a little bit about this is interesting about the great gig in the sky and the women giving birth.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the path when I write my books. I
Okay.
don't try to take the, you know, Route 80 all the way out to San Francisco,
Okay.
and I,
Okay.
I, I try to get off the paved roads once in a
Okay.
while.
Okay.
And I had heard first from my sweetheart, Marilyn, the wonderful painter, Marilyn Spitanik.
Yeah, I love her work. It's
Her
amazing.
friend of many years, who went by the name of Trixie Dane because she's Danish, but she couldn't reveal her real name or where she worked, or the surgeon that she worked with.
Right.
But she had been a surgeon's nurse for 25 years or so, doing heart and brain surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
She was telling me about this one surgeon who really loud music is what keeps him focused, what keeps him,
Yeah.
steady and in the moment. And so I said, well, what does he listen to? She's like, well, Wagner, Zeppelin, Beethoven, Pink Floyd. I'm like, wait a second. Has he ever operated a brain damage before?
I know,
She's
right?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, all the time. I'm like, okay,
I
now
know. That's
with
amazing.
brain surgery, the patient must remain awake
Right.
because they have to check your motor skills. They have to check your consciousness and your motor skills and all of that. So, literally, have you ever had a song stuck in your head? He's doing brain surgery and he lifts the blade and makes the change during. This is one of the things that made me consider, really decide to write this book.
Really?
When
Oh,
I thought,
wow.
yeah, when I thought that I could go down that kind of path. So I started like really, talking to different people, and somebody put me in touch with their daughter, who was a really good athlete. And she had won a lot of frisbee competitions, like what is that called? Ultimate frisbee. And she had given birth to, I think it was her second son, in an off-grid cabin up in New England. Again, somebody else who wanted to remain anonymous.
Right.
Um, and went by the name of Suzanne. And so Suzanne gave birth to her son standing up in the kitchen of her off-grid cabin, and she was, really, this is a natural birth, obviously, and she was involved in the whole idea of natural birth, and that,
Mm-hmm.
breathing and
Right.
opening up the meridians in your body and all of this. And so at the appropriate time, she flipped on Great Gig in the Sky and started to scream along with Claire Torrey as she gave birth. And I was like, okay, this is what, to me, Dark Side of the Moon is all about at this point. Because it's like, how has this album affected people over the last 50 years, become part of our culture?
Right.
I think that Joe Boyd actually said something about when the album came out, they never expected it to be in tape players of cab drivers all over the world, from Rio to to Mumbai to San Francisco to wherever, to Moscow, to everywhere. You can hear Dark Side of the Moon in a cab. I remember when I was in India and a guy popped in Bob Marley. It was like, when we go to Jupiter, they're going to be listening to classic rock, whether
Mm-hmm.
you like it or not.
Right. Right.
you
Well, what?
know
Yeah.
and so so there's I mean, I think that at one point, I'm talking to an old friend of mine who I went to grade school with, who's like a leading astronomer, and we did an interview about the moon and the effect on the moon. And then there's this whole study from the University of Miami, the shark side of the moon. Now just to get a study on whether on shark attacks to be called the shark side of the moon. This is really part of our culture.
Yeah.
And the prism, I think I can't remember if it was the black magician from Albuquerque, New Mexico, who I talked to about it, or it was the astronomer, but we talked about the prism. And I can't remember exactly who said it, if they said it or if I said it. If that the prism on the cover of that album is
Wait, let's see.
as
Wait a second.
identifiable.
There it is.
It's as identifiable as the cross or the Star of David at this point,
Yeah. That's
right?
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
It's really true. I mean, there's kids with T-shirts on, have no idea, never heard the album,
Hmm.
walking around probably in Mali or walking around in, wherever they might be in the outback. There's all kinds of people wearing that image and attracted to that image.
Hmm.
It's almost like the 2001 monolith or something.
Yeah, and also, I was reading on the back of your book. It hit the U.S. Billboard charts for over 700 weeks.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, it's
amazing.
just part of the culture. And
It
it's really
is.
funny when I taught at two colleges for about 10, 11 years. I taught the history of rock. And I would just start off by saying, okay, who's got a t-shirt of this? Who's got a poster up in their bedroom? You know that you're
Hmm.
listening to music that like your grandparents were listening to. It's almost as if I was putting up like posters of Louis Armstrong and Benny Goodman and or music from the 1920s, Jelly Roll Morton in my room, which is, cool. But it was like, okay, why does this album appeal to all of the generations, one after the next,
It's
after the
amazing.
next, after the next? Well, part of it is I really believe that there's just like Brian Wilson's Pet Sounds album. I think that there's a certain level of what I call transcendental soul music within this piece of music that raises people up. I mean, this is a dark work. There's a lot of dark stuff in this.
Right.
Also, Roger was listening to John's Plastic Ono Band right around the time when he was making this record and made a list of all the issues he wanted to address in his life and the band in their lives. He wanted to get real. He wanted to get away from all the space imagery and all that stuff of all the unicorns and the and all the imagery that Syd Barrett had brought to the table. He really wanted to get past that. So, okay, he is addressing a lot of aspects, and he would go on, of course, more and more to do that. And the further he went, uh, the less fun he became.
I just want to read this out. What he said, okay, on page 196. It says, despite the album's overall grim message of madness, fear, and death, Roger Waters, in an interview with Classic Albums, urged fans to follow the path toward the light rather than walk into the darkness.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm not sure if that's his message these days.
Okay.
I get a lot of negative
I know I know he left
comments
the
on my
band.
page, but I don't
Yeah.
really want to go into the
No, we don't
negative
want to
at
go
all.
into that. But he did leave the band in the 80s. And Syd Barrett, let's just talk a little bit about Syd Barrett was one of the co-founders and a
Well, he was
genius.
the visionary of the band. I mean,
Yeah, he was a visionary. Yeah.
he named the band after his two cats, Pink and Floyd, who he had named after Pink Anderson and Floyd Council
Okay.
from South Carolina, the great bluesmen. That's one of the things about this book that I don't know if any other book on Pink Floyd ever went into to the depth that I did here, because I knew Roy Bookbinder, the folk and blues guitarist who's still with us, and who went down to South Carolina and really helped Pink Anderson can get his career back together and get on the road and play gigs. And they were hoping that maybe the Floyd would, help them out, seeing that that's where the name came from. But that wasn't the case, sadly.
Okay. Okay.
But I don't know if there's ever been an interview that goes into the history of who Pink Anderson and Floyd Council were, to the point that I do in this book. So if you happen to be curious about things,
That's a
because
book.
no
Right.
little, there's no stone unturned here, as far as like, I'm always like, oh, you can't give me that piece of information without me like wanting to. Sam Shepard once wrote a really nice blurb for me. He said I was a manic bloodhound who chased down the information without losing the spirit behind it. And that
Hmm.
was like, wow, that was a really
That's really
beautiful,
neat.
and
I
yeah,
just want
that
to
was
show.
great.
That's great. No, and I'm going to show really quick the cover, and we're going to cover ourselves for a second. I just
There
want to
we
show this
go.
really quick. Yeah, I love the cover and the title, Lunacy. I looked up what it meant, lunacy.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you, okay, everyone. It can mean originality, eccentricity, intermittent insanity. And it comes from luna, the Latin word for moon, because people used to think that the changes of the moon changed their mood, maybe change people's moods. And then
Yeah,
luna,
which Dr. Bobrowski addresses in the book, which I interviewed,
right,
you know,
right. And then I don't know if you know this, but lunaticus was first written about in the 4th century in the Vulgate Bible, and it connotes danger, wildness, but nowadays, I don't know if you know about this, but it's now replacing mental illness.
well,
They're not
that
used.
would be Sid. That's
So
that.
that's
There
a
you go.
yes.
There you have Sid Barrett right there. And I
Well, he
want to
went on
say that
LSD. He destroyed himself with the wrong crowd and LSD. Right.
it was just, I don't think that people understood what they were doing to themselves at that point. I really don't. And if you have, I mean, there's only so much acid I think anybody's brain could take anyway, but if you were constantly soaking in it, as they used to
Right.
say about
Yeah.
palm olive dish liquid, if you're soaking in it,
Yeah.
it's bound to make you come apart.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that was the case. I just want to say that at one point, I was a touring member of one of my high school hero bands, the Blues Project from New York. And I worked with Danny Kalb, and Danny Kalb had a history of mental illness brought on by LSD that he took um, at the Monterey Pop Festival. Now, he had a proclivity towards paranoia before that, but
Right.
this only made things worse. And then when you tour with someone like that, you no longer turn it into this romantic kind of thing. And I really wanted to make that point clear in this book about Sid Barrett. I never knew Sid, but I did know a guy from a 60s rock band who basically became unhinged through too much LSD, and I have had no intention of romanticizing it whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
love
yeah.
Sid's work. I feel sorry for Sid. I don't make him a hero.
I know. It's
The
really.
hero of the book, the hero of the book is actually Richard Wright, Rick Wright, the
Oh.
keyboard,
Okay.
who I think really, really brought uh some very beautiful tonalities and originality and soundscapes to the band. And one of the things that I really felt about Roger Waters was that unfortunately he never recognized just how what a great band he was working with. And this is what happens with when the ego gets bent out of shape, you
Right.
know. And
Mhm.
so uh, no one said anything negative about Rick Wright. Everyone really, really gave him his just desserts here, and I'm really glad to help carry that to the consciousness. You know.
Mhm. And then, okay, and then you talk. Oh, the tribute albums. There's so many tribute albums too. And
Well,
some are really good
hands
though.
down, you got to hear the Squirrels. Hands
Okay.
down, Rob Morgan's
Okay.
album, The Not So Bright Side of the Moon. It's genius. It's brilliant. This is on the level of when Zappa took on Sergeant Pepper with We're Only in It for the Money. This is like, it's really parody at its finest. I mean, there were a number of really interesting ones I didn't know about. An all instrumental string quartet version
Right.
of the
Yeah.
album.
I listened to some
There's
of them.
a cappella version of the album that's really beautiful.
Right.
Mm,
Oh, and then
but
there's
hands
yeah.
down for me,
Okay.
Rob Morgan's Squirrels album, The Not So Bright Side,
Okay.
brilliant.
Yeah, and I listened to some of the ones you mentioned.
Yeah, that
Really
is,
interesting. But you said
yeah.
there's
And what
so
was really
many.
wild, what was really wild about also the Squirrels was that the guy who played the saxophone, Skerrick, he actually wound up playing for Roger Waters. And he didn't know if Roger knew about the tribute album that he played on because I don't know, you know, it really. But also, I love the dub side of the moon too. That was really cool.
Oh,
That
that's what I was
easy,
thinking of, the dubs. I
the
like
easy
them.
all stars. That's
Yes, I thought they were great. Really
very groovy,
interesting.
very hip. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really
Uh-huh.
enjoy it. That's like an album that you could just put on and listen to. And I mean, because like we've heard these songs, we've heard this album so many times, so that to have somebody breathe some fresh breath into it,
Yeah.
you know, was really great and inspiring.
Yeah. I thought it was too. It was really fun. So, is
Hmm.
there anything else? I want to wrap this up, but we're going to have to do part B here. There's just so much to talk about. But is there anything? Okay, now how can people get your album? Your album. Well, I love your music too, by the way. I'm a big fan of your music as well as your
Well, thank
writing.
you.
Yeah,
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me, you know, on Bandcamp.
right. Well, I've been
Uh,
posting it,
Somebody
so
co-opted johnkruth.com, so that's not me,
I
folks.
know, I know.
Um, there's my little Hotmail address right there. I'm just looking
But also,
through
you
it.
can
You
get your
know,
book on
for me,
Amazon.
this, yeah,
Amazon.
you can go to Amazon B. You can be an Amazon B. I like Goodreads better,
Oh,
but
okay.
but that's okay. And I'm just looking through it, and of course, I talk about, you know, the Wizard of Oz experience and
Oh,
all
right,
of
with the
that.
rainbow.
And
You with
I also want to mention that Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate wrote a lovely introduction to the book. That was really fun.
Mhm.
And I interview a lot of people that you might not either know or expect to be in there because this album, you know, has affected so many people. One of my favorite interviews was with jazz vocalist Judy Silvano, who is married to Joe Lovano. And she pointed out that, like, look, you know, you could go listen to Stravinsky and you're going to hear some very similar kind of aspects that you hear of a great gig in the sky. So, you know, there's this mesh of all these. And oh, and I talked to Cindy Cash Dollar, the wonderful
Yeah, she was in your stuff. Yeah.
steel guitarist,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
there's this whole history of steel guitar. And then there's David Gilmour using a steel guitar, not in country music,
Mhm.
because it's been a tool of country music at this point, right up until Lunacy. And then all of a sudden, I mean, right up until Dark Side of the Moon. And then all of a sudden uh, you've got David Gilmour playing steel guitar. And it's like, and then later on, of course, you find out that the Africans are using pedal steel guitar and lap steel guitar. King Sunny Ade. When we first heard Juju music, it was like, wait a minute, that's like a steel guitar, and we're not talking about Hank Williams here. We're not talking about country music. So the album contained so many aspects of music, of classical, of jazz, of country, of all these different aspects musically and philosophically. It's uh, I would
Yeah, I
not
mean,
say
I'm
that.
like blown away by your book. I'm telling you, I told you, it's like mind blowing. It's such an
Thank
experience
you,
reading your book. And now I can't
thank
wait
you.
to read your other books. I'm like, I just love the way you write. And it's just, you
Well,
learn so much, and you are very
great,
funny. So it's like very entertaining. And I'm
thank
so
you,
glad I met you. And I'm just so inspired and also you're an incredible musician. I can't
thank you,
rave
Princess
enough
Ma.
about your work, really, and you're just it's very special person, and I just am so grateful that I was able to read your book and to experience your music and to
Thank you,
meet you. Really, see,
thanks.
I mean, I genuinely mean that, and it's like I've learned so much from this book, and just so
Wow.
exciting, and also
Well,
just
I
yeah,
think you'll like the other ones in that I've done three 50 years on books. The first one was
yeah,
Rubber Soul. I was
right,
teaching college, and I just looked at the blackboard and I said to the few students that were paying attention, man, this could be kind of like the framework for a book here,
okay,
And
uh-huh.
so that's where I got the idea to do that one.
Oh, okay,
And then I did a book on the history of the outlaw song. That had a lot to do with after I wrote my biography of Townes Van Zandt. I had all these other great interviews about the history of the outlaw song. And I just thought, well, what about the outlaw song around the world? What about Italian outlaws and Australian outlaws and Brazilian outlaws? And, it didn't just end with Texas. And then I did the John and Yoko book, and because that album had such an impact on me. John's album initially, and then
me too,
Yoko. In the
me
long
too.
run, Yoko is a dark horse. She just
She's
keeps
amazing.
running.
I know, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I love this in the back, we have the Dark Side of the Moon playlist.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that too,
Well,
'cause yeah,
yeah, you could
listen
find
to
out.
all
I'm
these
sure there's a
songs.
few things I missed. I'm sure there always is. That's what's so lovely about doing a second volume. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, you have a deadline. You're trying to get 300 pages or so done in a certain period of time, and it is a gig. And but yeah, I asked them at the end, hey, do you want my playlist? I've been making this playlist as I go because it's like by the time you get to the end of the book, you might forget about I was talking about this
Right,
music here or that music there. And there's a whole history of electronic sound in the book
right.
and a history of the British blues explosion
And
in
then
the book.
Sun
And
Ra, you talk about Sun Ra, who I met years
oh, of
ago, and
course.
yes,
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah. Got to
amazing.
interview Sun Ra. That was
I know,
really
that's
great.
incredible. That's so cool. So yeah, so I'm going starting to go through your playlist because you're introducing me to a lot of music I never heard of.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
Good,
it's
good, good, good.
exciting. It's really cool.
Well, yeah, I'm happy for that. That's what I'm here for. I mean, I want to educate as much as entertain. I
Yeah.
mean, that's for sure. And I hope that in all of that, I hope that I got the dates right.
Okay, good. And also
You
I
know,
play, yeah,
you
as a
try.
beginning guitar player and ukulele player, I learned so much too as a musician. All
Cool.
the things you talk about with, all the different instruments. So it's
Great,
really
great.
cool. Yeah, so
Well,
that's
at
the
this point, I'm just focusing on writing my own music right now with a new version. I had a band called TriBeCaStan for
right.
almost 8 or 9 years. I think we did 6 or 7 recordings, and we played in Russia, and we played in Czech Republic, and we played in California, and we played all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And bands run their course, and now I'm putting together a new band called the Folk Lorchestra,
Oh.
because it's folkloric in many ways. And I had this idea back when I was a teenager, when I saw an orchestra, and I thought, wow, that was great. I love those instruments, but what are they playing that music for? It's like, maybe you could get like an oboe together with a mandolin and a banjo, and like, mix it all together. And so I'm writing music for that, for an
Oh,
upcoming album that I'm
oh,
really
cool.
excited
Oh,
about.
good. Uh-huh.
So I'm focusing on my own music for a little while now, because nobody's getting any younger around here.
Mm,
And
good. Uh-huh. We're ageless wonders.
yeah,
Yeah. We just
so
keep
that's
going forward.
still writing for Waxpoetics and Fretboard Journal and a few other venues that still are struggling, but still here, because it's really been something else watching all of these magazines and websites just drop off over the years.
Yeah.
And I got another book cooking, but I'm not talking about that
And yeah, we're promoting this book right now.
yet.
Yeah. So it's just coming out this week.
Yeah, March
Yeah. So
1st.
that's exciting.
Unbelievable. 1973, it was released. And boy, I'm sure glad to be here 50 years later. I wasn't so sure all the time.
Hmm. Right. Well, we're still here and we're just moving forward, right? Just keep
Right.
creating. Artists never retire. So
Wow.
I love that
Wow.
picture. Yeah, that
Princess,
picture.
wow.
Yeah, that
Huh?
picture. I love that picture of you with it going up
Oh,
against that
I do
colorful
that
wall.
often. I do
It's
that often. I'm just trying to catch it.
it's good.
Just
I
trying to
like
catch
it.
it.
It's really
The
good.
inspiration, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's great.
The
That
love, the mercy, whatever it is, I'm trying to catch it.
yeah, that
You know.
captures you. That captures your qualities. That the way you do that. So it's really cool. So I'm so
Thanks.
grateful you took the time to be on my show,
Oh, happy.
and
Very happy.
it's wonderful. And
I'll try to
uh,
drop by on Friday if I can.
what's Friday?
Oh,
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday. I know we're pre-recording this. I know
Write it
that's
down
a
in the calendar.
Thursday.
Old school. I have to
Thursday.
keep the old school
Me too.
calendar.
I do too.
Otherwise,
I do too.
I can't.
I'm the same way. I have to write stuff down. So anyway, thank you so much. It's been a real joy to spend some time with you and hear all about your amazing work.
Thank you, Princess.
Okay, so you can get his book, John's book, Lunacy, and the subtitle is The Curious Phenomena of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon 50 Years On. I'm going to show it again.
You can
And
email me or find me on Facebook if you want it signed. Otherwise,
right. Yeah. Okay.
Goodreads or Amazon.
Okay, I'm a zombie, right? I know. Okay, and hopefully we'll get together soon and I'll get my signed copy.
Sure.
Okay. So anyway, thanks a lot and we will talk to you later.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hi everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that. And Laura said, yeah, no, he's an amazing guy. I don't know if John's still on. But I just really enjoyed that interview so much, and yeah, I know he's amazing. He's amazing. Oh, good. I'm glad Nancy enjoyed it too. Yep, I know it's amazing. I feel like I have to. I mean, I could have talked to him for 3 hours, and we may have to do another show at some point with him. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed that. It sounds like you did. I really enjoyed it too, and you got to get the book. It's just he's a great writer and it's fascinating. So anyway, next week, I've got Willie Nile, another amazing musician and amazing guy. If you've ever seen him in person, he's an incredible performer, and he opened up for the Who years ago. And I'll read a little bit about him. He's going to be playing. Oh, John's still on. Okay. Oh yes, he said thanking everybody. Oh, good. Okay, great. So, Willie is going to be performing up here at the Falcon in Marlboro, if you live anywhere near the Hudson Valley, which I do, on the 11th of March. And so I'll be interviewing him this next week. I'll give you a little bio. The New York Times called Buffalo, New York born Willie Nile one of the most gifted singer-songwriters to emerge from the New York scene in years. Uncut magazine called him a one-man clash. His album Streets of New York was hailed as a platter for the ages by Uncut. Rolling Stone listed The Innocent Ones as one of the top 10 best under-the-radar albums of 2011, and BBC Radio called it the rock and roll album of the year. His single from that album, One Guitar. Oh, I love that song so much. If nobody's heard that One Guitar song, oh, it's incredible. Oh, good interview, Princess. Well, thanks. Laura said, thanks, John. And Maureen said, wait a minute. Excellent show. Yeah, Willie rocks. He's an amazing guy, too. I mean, he's just such a wonderful person. So, anyway, let's see. One Guitar is one of the top pick of the week in USA Today. His single from that album. I love that song so much. Bono, Bruce Springsteen, Pete Townsend, Lou Reed, Lucinda Williams, Jim Jarmusch, and Little Steven are among those who have sung his praises. Anyway, can go on and on and on. But anyway, he's an amazing guy, and so I'm really excited about interviewing him for him coming up to perform up here in the Hudson Valley next week on the 11th. So next Thursday at 8 o'clock, hope you can join. And love you all very much. And join the Smile Revolution. We need more joy in the world. And here I'm going to close with my credits. See you next week. Bye. Oh, wait, Marianne had something to say. Oh, John. I don't know if John's still on, but okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Marianne, for watching. Okay, here we go. I'm closing with my credits. It's called the Smile Revolution that comes, goes round and back to you. So smile, 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 a simple smile will do. Smile, 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 it comes back to you. Bye. Okay. Oh, wait, we got some more comments here. Okay. Okay, great. Okay.